We always talk about those two hats, right? And I think from a CEO hat perspective, that was a tremendous day for our program. I think the exposure we got on a national scale, I think it was obviously it was the first time we hosted game day, but I think it was also the first time we had an ABC primetime slot. And to go out and get that many people watching the game, that many people watching it, to have the atmosphere and the crowd that we did, I think that impacts everything. It impacts how people view your program. It impacts how recruits view your program. It impacts what people see as the ceiling of your program. Obviously, and again, we always talk about this. We are a company that's growing. We really are, and we're a company that's growing every single day. And but when you see a day like that, and you're able to point to that's where we're trying to get this thing consistently, I think people see that now as a reality. Whereas maybe 18 months ago I was just a guy talking. Now I think maybe it's like, oh, okay, like maybe this is something. Maybe Duke football can become this national brand that he keeps talking about.
The Duke-UNC rivalry obviously is big. Can State slip in there and become a rival like that, or is there room for two rivals for Duke? I mean, I can weigh you down a little bit to these rivalry games.
Yeah, I think proximity creates rivalry. I think proximity creates rivalry because there's such a familiarity. Our guys know their guys. There's a connection through recruiting. There's a connection through playing each other in high school. Like, I think anytime, and this is probably the one thing to get on the grand stage for a second, but like keeping the conferences a little bit more regional, like making sure that we keep in mind this part of football a little bit, which is these games are a lot of fun for the kids. When they get to go and they play the schools that are right down the road, and the kids that they're going to bump into all spring, and when they're out in Raleigh and vice versa, like those things matter. And I think, anytime you have proximity, I think you add a little bit to the game for sure. And so I don't know that it's necessarily, I don't know that you count how many rivals you have or how many rivalry games you have, but certainly there's a little bit of an added meaning when you're playing a team that's 20 minutes down the road.
Earlier in the season, you talked a lot about when you had these bigger leads in games, getting some players opportunities to play, right? You look back at Lafayette when Henry goes in and goes, 8 for 8 for 118. In the event that he would play this weekend, how big does that go for his confidence and what he's able to contribute on the field?
Yeah, those snaps matter so much. And so, even go back to last week when you talk about Brian Parker. Brian Parker's starting for the first time, but he has not playing for the first time. He was able to get in a solid 50, 60 snaps in the beginning part of the season. And all of that stuff matters. Every time they get out on the field in live situations, I know to a lot of the fans it's the end of the game and it's not as impactful, but for those kids, like, those snaps are everything, and if they take them the right way, it really helps in their growth and development. And so no different from Henry and no different from Grayson. Both those guys being able to have been on the field, to know what it's like, to know how to operate, to be able to know where the game clocks are, to be able to move at the pace they need to move at in the game, like, all of that stuff matters. And so, those are obviously things that they'll lean on when they get their chances.